If you're a musician who sends emails that nobody opens, or maybe people open them but they don't click, here's what I want you to do. Stop sending emails, just for a sec. And instead, get out a marker or a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, and I want you to draw a treasure map. I'm serious. A treasure map. It can have ships and pirates and waves and caves and swords and whatever else you want, but the most important part is start with the X that marks the spot. Start there, work backwards, make the rest of the map, and now you know everything you need to know about how to send an email that fans will care about, actually open, actually read, and actually click. The hell am I talking about? Let's get into it. What's up? Welcome to Scratch Track. This is the podcast for very busy musicians who have adult lives and they're juggling a lot of responsibilities and they want to move their music forward without having to go broke or chase new trends every 6 months. My name's Chris Robley and Scratch Track is brought to you this week and every week by Demo, the place where we create courses and coaching and consulting and guides and content to help you do just that. Keep music as a vital part of your life where you can move forward creatively and in terms of the business aspects of your career, grow your fan base, and in a way where it actually fits into your real life. Couple of pieces of quick housekeeping. Just want to say thanks to Jay and Mike from the Your Morning Coffee podcast. They had me on episode 262 to talk about Spotify, the bad, the ugly, and yes, the good of Spotify. It was a lot of fun. They said some really nice things about this podcast, which was super appreciated. So I'll put a link in the show notes to that episode. And last bit of housekeeping, I want to brag that I have a perfect 5-star score on the Apple Podcast reviews because I only have one review. Thanks so much to MD for writing it. It says, love this podcast. This is the podcast I've been looking for musicians who are serious but have other things happening in life as well. Great advice, informed perspective, great vibe. More, please. Really appreciate that. If you want to leave a review, it's super helpful for helping this podcast reach more listeners. So whether you're on Spotify or Apple or wherever, if you're on YouTube, you can leave comments. It takes you just a few seconds to do, but it'll have a great impact for me. And, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you can help me keep that perfect 5-star average going, amazing. All right, let's talk about email. Let me know if you are the type of person who's ever spent an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours writing an email, you send it out there, and it does nothing. There are a few reasons that could be happening. One is they didn't see your email in the first place. It's not ending up in their priority inbox because they have not engaged with the last handful of emails you've sent. So now things like Gmail and Outlook view your messages as spam, at least for this individual recipient. Maybe they saw the email in their inbox, but they just didn't click on it because the subject line was blah. It didn't make them curious, it didn't appeal to them, or maybe because you already answered the question in the subject line, like new single out now. Well, they might have already listened to the single and now they're like, cool, don't need that. Or people opened the email, they read it, and they didn't do anything. They didn't click, they didn't reply, they didn't help you teach Gmail and Outlook that these are emails worth receiving. And so your emails are going ignored, they're falling flat. And this is having the counterproductive effect of teaching you that email isn't worth doing. But you'd be wrong, that's the wrong lesson to learn. Instead, you should figure out the right way to use it so that you can have the proof that it is effective and powerful and at least 4 times better than social at converting attention into actual outcomes. And today I'm going to tell you all about how treasure maps will give you a framework, an allegory, a metaphor to send better emails without you having to feel gross or clickbaity or spammy. Speaking of spam, that's the topic of today's trivia. So what was the first spam email ever sent? And how the hell did it generate $13 million in sales? I'll give you the answer at the end of this episode. Okay, here's what I want you to rethink. An email is not a message, it's a map. I went to go see my niece a couple weeks ago in a children's kind of musical play of Treasure Island. And as I'm watching it, I'm having the realization this story is the perfect metaphor for good email marketing, how to write and send effective emails. Because so much of it is tied into this map, which conveys a journey. And if you're the maker of the map, you know where to put the X, and then you can work backwards to craft a journey that is actually worth going through. Of course, that means you're going to treat email not as a single thing, not as a single message, but as a journey, a story with component parts, just like the treasure map. The treasure map has a where do you start? Where do you get on the ship? You got to go across the ocean. You got to deal with these sea monsters. Then you got to get on the island. Then you got to traipse through the jungle. You got to avoid these trees and this river and this cliff and these bears or creatures in the woods. You have to eventually get to the X, whether it's a cave or a rock. And then Is that where the treasure is? Maybe it's 15 feet below the rock. Maybe it's deep inside the cave. Maybe you go through a magic portal. The X itself is not the treasure. And all of that is a perfect representation of email. That is very different from something like an Instagram post, especially if the Instagram post is a picture. You can, on quick scroll, see the image, read a short caption, and have, within 2 or 3 seconds, a full impression of the whole story that's being conveyed there. Email should not work like that. If we break email into 3 parts for now, or actually let's break it into 4 parts. The subject line, the body copy, the stuff, the story of the email, the call to action, which is maybe the button, the link that gets them off of the email, and then the treasure beyond it, right? So there's 4 parts. That is much less like an Instagram post and much more like a film, which has an announcement and then a trailer. And then, you go watch the things. There's opening credits, there's the story, there's the closing credits. And then a lot of times there's the part afterwards where like Nick Fury comes and assembles the Avengers. Or you could compare email to a book where there's the cover of the book, there's the title of the book, there's maybe some blurbs from other authors. If the book has won an award, there's a picture of the award there. Then you go on the back cover and you read a little summary, and then you open it up and maybe you read the author bio, then you go through the book. These things, films, books, as journeys are much better metaphor for what an email should be. Though an email, of course, is much simpler. And as I said, it's going to have the subject line, the body, the action that you want the person to take, and then the thing beyond the action, the actual treasure, the reward, the answer to the mystery. If you ever drew a treasure map when you were 5 or 8 or 12 or 40, you probably know the danger of just starting, right? There's this fun beginning. Someone gets on the ship. They got to go across the ocean. As I said, there's all these component parts of the adventure. And then suddenly you're like out of space. You're like, oh God, here's the X. And then you're kind of going stream of consciousness through a journey you're inventing. And maybe that's okay. But the better way is to reverse engineer. Start with the X, because if you don't know where fans should end up, you're not going to have a very easy time getting them to start the journey. And then you can focus on the cadence and the pacing and the mystery that happens at each step along the way. When you make the treasure map in reverse, you know exactly what's needed at every step and what's unneeded. And that's the next thing I want you to think about. Leave out anything that answers the whole story. Each step, the subject line, the body, the action, the thing beyond the action, should feel like part of an unfinished puzzle that fans complete one step at a time by clicking, replying, buying, doing the things. Imagine for a second that your email is self-contained. Between the subject, the body, and the CTA, there is nothing else to do. There's nothing else to wonder about. You've answered the question. You've told the whole story. Now your email, instead of an invitation, is actually a dead end. So how can a CTA, how can a call to action be a dead end? Let's revisit the example I gave at the beginning of the show. New song out today. Well, maybe the person already heard it in their Discover Weekly. They don't need to hear it. And so if your invitation is hear the new song, it doesn't apply to them, it doesn't appeal to them. Similarly, if they get into the body of the email and you are describing what the treasure is in such detail, you're like, oh, at the end of this adventure, you're going to get a lifetime supply of Chex Mix. I mean, are you going to go through a life-endangering journey across the ocean and fight monsters and pirates and stuff to get a lifetime supply of Chex Mix? Probably not. You might not even like Chex Mix. So if you tell the whole story in the body copy, there's no reason to click. Even worse, if you tell the whole story in the subject line, such as new song out today, then there's no reason to even get into the email. If they get into the email and you tell a long-winded story, it's boring, it doesn't appeal to them, or there's too many different stories so they don't know what to concentrate on or what to do, you've lost them. I'm confused, I'm bored, I'm overwhelmed, I don't have time for this, I'm not going to click. If someone took an awesome photo of your last show, it's a really dramatic picture, you want people to see it, don't put it in the body. Don't put it in the email. Describe it in a little bit of detail, get them to click. If it's on Instagram, get them to go to Instagram and like and comment. If you put it in the email, there's nothing else to do. In a similar vein, if you have a new music video and you're really excited about the vibe and the look of it, and you're describing it in sort of a captivating way, but then you put the thumbnail there, well, someone might say, there's my answer. I can see from the thumbnail what the vibe of this video is. Maybe I'll watch it later, but for now, the question is answered. The mystery is solved. I know what it looks like. I'm not compelled to click through and go to YouTube and see it and potentially like it, leave a comment, subscribe. So you never at any step of the way want to answer the mystery. So if we're going to reverse engineer our emails all the way back to the beginning, to the subject line, every good pirate story needs a hook. How does a subject line get someone to go on this journey? Well, I can't vouch for how close the children's musical version of Treasure Island tracks to the original story. But, there's this character, Billy Bones, that comes and entices the hero onto the ship and to take this great risk, right? And most adventure stories start like that. There's the kind of the archetypical hero who is perhaps orphaned or mistreated or misunderstood or seeking fortune for some internal reason. Maybe sometimes like Luke Skywalker, it's kind of not a spoiled brat, but a brat who has to go out there into the world and get kicked around a little bit. But something calls to that hero to get on that ship, to take the adventure, right? Maybe for this map allegory, you shouldn't envision your fan as the hero, although if you can, that's great. But it's probably more true to say that your fan is the reader of this story or the watcher of the play who cares about why the hero goes on the journey. They want to know what happens to this kid. And again, that plays on curiosity. When I look back over the emails I've sent about my own music, here are some of the subject lines that performed really well. What does my face look like after getting slapped a dozen times? I had the worst week. I still have one trick up my sleeve. The very first zombie story is older than you think. I was forced to have a lifeguard for this. Some unexpected good news. Now, there's not a lot of specificity there, and it does talk about news, which isn't usually the best angle. But in this case, it worked because it was unexpected. People don't yet know what the news was, and they cared about me because they're on my list. So that one worked in my case. Here's a few more. Why does this song have so many Spotify plays? The best time I've ever had, ... In what possible universe? Being cool is for losers. So those are some of the subject lines that worked really well for me. They all planted a little seed of curiosity. Urgency can also work, like if you had a message that's like, you have until Friday. Or personalization. Chris, this is your song. Or I wrote this for you. Derek Sivers, who founded CD Baby, was an absolute genius at writing emails that made people feel like he was talking directly to them. Like he had this one email that said, hey, I'm sitting here looking at your album. And of course it was personalized. So it'd say, hey, Chris, I'm sitting here looking at your album. And I'm like, oh, you are? You are hearing my album? You're seeing the cover? No, of course not. It was sort of an automated behind the scenes process where something got flagged about the album that he needed to then notify you about. But the way it was written felt urgent and personal. So for contrast, let's look at some bad subject lines and how to improve them. New single out now, stream it. Better version would be, I wrote this song after the worst gig of my life. Same announcement, same reason for writing. You want people to hear the song. One of them tugs on emotions and makes me think, I want to know more about this. The other one is a self-contained news announcement. I feel nothing. Here's another one we can improve upon. Upcoming Maine gigs in September and October. I live in Maine. I've got a lot of friends sending these kinds of emails right now. Instead of that, what about my fall calendar just got weird? Choose your own autumn adventure. This gig involves schooners. Maybe the boat, maybe the beer. Why Maine sounds better in September. Now, that's a little tourist bureau-y, but I still think it plants some curiosity that might make someone want to click and figure out what the heck you're talking about. Or to go on plain old urgency, some of these gigs will sell out. All right, so we've talked a bit about subject lines, how to get people on board the pirate ship. We've talked about the end game, the X that marks the spot and the treasure. What about the middle, the kind of the bulk of the journey? What do we have to say about the body copy? I think in most cases, plain text, no formatting, no design, no images. Make it look simple, like it's a personal direct email, like something a friend would send you. If you personalize it with the recipient's name as well, then you've really got this casual vibe going where it truly looks like an email from a friend. And the simpler these things are to write and format and to send, the more often you'll do it, which is another just sort of basic reason why plain text is best. So you're making it easy to format these things. What should you write? Well, keep it short in most cases. If you want to make it really easy to consume, you can format it for skimming with, bold font, bullet points. But even that suggests that you need to say a lot. I think it's really good to remember that an email can just be 1 or 2 sentences long. If that's what's going to plant the mystery to get them to click the thing, to go to the place beyond the email, you can not only keep these things short, but very short. Now, when it comes to storytelling, yes, I've talked about a map that includes an ocean and an island and a jungle and all this stuff. For you, I would share one scene, one story, one emotion. It's easier to digest. It's easier to drop right into that world. And that means it's going to be easier to get them to the call to action. That's not going to be true in all cases. There's no one-size-fits-all like approach to email marketing. And I have friends and people I respect out there who send emails that I would say as a marketer are terrible ideas, but they work. There's a songwriter I really respect named Anna Tivell whose emails are this kind of mix of like a diary entry, a newsletter with like tour announcements, and then a poem. It's too much. I'm asked to pay attention to too many things. And yet every time I read it all, because I love her music, I'm invested in her as an artist. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt and apply it how you want. But it's also true that not every email needs a result. It may sound strange and a thing that is all about using email to get results, but it's okay if you're sending emails every week to have some of them just be to say hi, see what's up, to share a joke. But when you need them to take an action, make sure that call to action is more of an invitation and less of a demand. The demand risks you being ultra clear about this and ruining the mystery. So for instance, you describe that you have a bunch of new t-shirts and now you say, buy my merch. If the button says buy my merch, they can say, I don't want to, or I'm not ready, as opposed to using the email to describe the awesome designs, but don't show them, and then use the call to action to say, see the designs. Now there's one more layer of mystery. When they get over there to your shop, they're going to see the design and they'll see the button there, add to cart or buy the shirt or whatever it is. And that's the dead end. If they're not going to buy it, that's the point at which they're going to turn around. Don't let them turn around sooner than that. So if you remember that every email you send, or most of the emails you send, are treasure maps, start with the button that tells them what action you want them to take, then reverse engineer it to make sure the body copy makes them want to click the button, and then reverse engineer further to make sure that the subject line makes them want to open and read the copy. If you trace your path backwards like that and you leave enough room for mystery and emotion or urgency at every step, then the reader has to do the work to complete that journey. And as a result, you're going to get more opens, better deliverability, more people reading, more people clicking, more sales, more concert attendees, more streams, more video views, all the good stuff that you want them to do. So as your challenge this week, I want you to ignore the voice in your head that's telling you that marketing is salesy and pushy, and think of it instead as part of a story that you're going to tell, and write an email that functions this way as a treasure map. Write it backwards, hit send, and see what happens. All right, trivia answer time. So I told you that the very first spam email ever sent generated $13 million in sales. Here's the details. It was all the way back in 1978, a guy named Gary Thurk, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was a marketing manager at a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, and he sent an unsolicited email about their new product. And he sent the message on the ARPANET, which is sort of the pre-internet internet, to approximately 400 people promoting their new computer model, and the campaign reportedly generated $13 million in sales. Interestingly, though, that email also sparked immediate complaints from a ton of people who received it because they thought it was a kind of bastardization of the purpose of the internet or the ARPANET. And the administrators of that system actually contacted the guy and made him promise to never send emails like that again. So maybe that's another lesson for you if you have that voice saying, oh, email is spammy, it's gross. Well, maybe it is a little spammy sometimes, but it can also lead to the results you want for your music career. And particularly if you're doing it well and telling a story and being personal and being vulnerable and available for your audience and actually having kind of a real connection with these people, they're not going to hold it against you when you are slightly salesy because, again, they're your fans. They're the most likely people to support you. And if they're not, they can get the hell off your list. Over the past few episodes, we've discussed how powerful email is, why it really should be your top priority, then how to build your list through a lead magnet that is worth the person's time and contact info. And today, how to write and format emails that people actually want to open and read and click and act upon. But there is one last piece of the puzzle, and that is what to write about. It's pretty obvious when you have a new song, a new video, a new tour, but what do you do every other week of the year? Because you really should be writing your list weekly. Well, that's going to be the topic of an episode coming very soon, so stay tuned and ahoy, matey.